Hi guys, so we're in key issue 4 tonight, which is why do territorial conflicts arise among religious groups? And so we're going to look at, initially we're going to look at religion versus government policies. So religious groups may oppose policies seen as contradicting their religious values. Religion is an element of cultural diversity that has led to most conflict in places. Religious fundamentalism is a literal interpretation and strict adherence to basic principles of a religion that spurred more intense conflict recently. This is particularly easy to see with the Taliban. The Taliban controls Afghanistan's government. It controlled Afghanistan's government in the 1990s, which led to strict laws opposing Western values. Although the Taliban was stopped after the war that started after 9/11, the Taliban has begun to rise again and is in power again. So that continues to be an issue. So some issues that the Taliban saw that were Western or non-Islamic were things like music, flying kites, watching television, surfing the internet. Soccer stadiums were converted to places for executions and floggings. Men that shaved their heads and were beaten. Women that were seen as committing adultery were stoned. Homosexuals were buried alive. Prostitutes were hanged in front of audience. Thieves had their hands cut off. Women who wore nail polish, had their fingers cut off. But Western values weren't the only targets. Buddhist statues were also destroyed in 2001. Oh, which I actually remember this. It tells you how old I am. So these huge Buddhist statues. Let's see if there's a picture of it. Negative. Okay, these huge Buddhist statues. Oh, it's in your book on page 2013. Were destroyed by the Taliban. It was really terribly sad because these statues were, let's see, they're about 1,800 years old. And so to have them destroyed, just really sad that that those are gone now. As a part of history and as a part of, someone else's religion, that the Taliban could just come in and destroy these. So what the Taliban did is they promoted what they deemed was virtue, and they prevented what they deemed was vice through their laws. And they believed they'd been called by Allah to purge Afghanistan of sin and violence and to make it a pure Islamic state. Islamic scholars criticized the Taliban as poorly educated in Islamic law and history for misreading the Quran. So the U.S.-led coalition overthrew the Taliban in 2001, replaced it with a democratically elected government, but the Taliban has been able to regroup and resume its fight to regain control of Afghanistan and parts of Pakistan. So if you have read the Kite, what's it called, guys? Why can't I think of it? The Kite Runner, jeez, or 1,000 Splendid Suns. Those are both good books to kind of get an idea of what life in Afghanistan was like. The Kite Runner is more of a male perspective, and 1,000 Splendid Suns is more of a female perspective. Also, I listened to those as a book on tape. Really interesting to do it that way because they are, I think the first one is read by the author, and the second one is read by an Afghani woman, and so you really hear it in that, in their voice and in their language. And obviously it's translated to English, but it's really beautiful to hear from that point of view and from that, with that accent. It's really neat. Okay. Conflicts likely to occur at the boundary between two religious groups. So religious wars in Ireland. Small fraction of the Irish chose to join the United Kingdom when Ireland became independent in 1937. 46% of the Irish are Protestant and 40% were Roman Catholic. And Roman Catholics have been victimized by discriminatory practices such as the exclusion from there's terrible typos in this PowerPoint. Higher paying jobs and better schools. And then Belfast, the capital city, is highly segregated. Protests by Roman Catholics began in 1968 with bloodshed of both Protestants and Roman Catholics. If you listen to the U2 song Sunday Bloody Sunday, that's what it's about. Let's see, I got some other good stuff. Any of you guys who watched Downton Abbey, I don't know if any of you guys do that, but there's a large, portion of that that's about the issue in Ireland, with the guy who's the driver, and then he marries one of the girls. I don't want to give you any spoilers, but that happens. So that deals with the issues in Ireland. So here's Belfast, and here's the portion of Northern Ireland that considers itself part of the United Kingdom, and then here's what is just considered Ireland that does not consider itself part of the United Kingdom. Oh, let me go back to that. So you can see where there are more Protestants are where Northern Ireland, where people consider themselves, where people have joined the United Kingdom. And then where people are more Catholic, so see, here's Belfast, and then the issues that have arisen because there are Catholics in certain areas. What would be nice to see is like where there have been like bombings or where there have been some sort of terrorist attack. I mean, nice to see being relative, but okay, in the Middle East, conflict in the Middle East is among the world's longest standing. Jews, Christians, and Muslims have fought nearly 2,000 years to control the same small strip of land in the eastern Mediterranean. For Judaism, there's a special claim to the territory it calls the Promised Land, where major events in the development of the religion occurred. For Islam, the Muslim army conquered this land in the 7th century AD. And Jerusalem is the third holiest city to Muslims because it's believed to be where Muhammad ascended into heaven. So remember, we have Mecca, Medina, and now we have Jerusalem. And then Christianity considers it the Holy Land and Jerusalem the Holy City because the major events in Jesus' life, death, and resurrection occurred there. Okay, so this first map shows us the partition that was created in 1947 by the UN Partition Plan. So before this happens, guys, we have oh, come on, brain. Hold on, let me see if the book will help me. Partition of Palestine. No, it won't, of course. But so before the petition actually goes into effect, right after World War II, there begins to be planning with the mandates that exist in Palestine. So at that point, the British own that territory, or the British control that territory, and they're trying to decide what to do with it. And then that kind of goes on hold until... Sorry, I'm looking at the book to see if they say what that plan is called, because I can't think of it off the top of my head. That kind of goes on hold during World War II, and then after World War II, the Zionist movement begins, which is a movement for Jewish people to have their own, land, and the British and the UN decide this would be a great place for people to go. Unfortunately, they decide to send the Jewish people to a place where there are already people living. And so, this pink, this kind of strange salmony color, becomes the Jewish state, and the green places become the Arab Muslim state. So this is what the plan is going to be. But there are already people living in those places that are marked off for the Jewish state. And so you see in the second map here, this is, there's definitely going to be times of war, and so 1948 to 49 is a war of independence, and Israel is going to. Okay, so the Jewish people declare the state of Israel to be independent within the boundaries prescribed by the UN. Over the next quarter century, Israel fights 4 wars with its neighbors. So the first one is the 48-49 Independence War. When Israel declares independence, the neighboring Arab states declare war. Israel survives, and the combatants sign an armistice in 1949. Israel's boundaries are extended beyond the UN partition, including the western suburbs of Jerusalem. Jordan gains control of the West Bank and East Jerusalem, including the Old City where holy sites are clustered, and Egypt gains the Gaza Strip. So here's the Gaza Strip right here. And then the West Bank, so Jordan gets this chunk right here called the West Bank. And now this whole time, you've got refugees moving back and forth, because when all these Jewish people come in, a lot of these Jewish people are coming in from Europe, where they had been during and after the Holocaust. And so where are those Muslim people going? They're becoming refugees. So those people are moving down into Egypt. Those people are moving, many of them moving into Jordan, up into Lebanon and Syria. And so it creates this huge refugee situation. Then in 1956, we have the Suez War. Egypt seizes the Suez Canal, which is a major shipping route. So you see the Suez Canal, which had been built by the French. The British are very concerned about the Suez Canal because it's extremely important for shipping, so that they don't have to go all the way around Africa. So the Egyptians seize the Suez Canal, which is a shipping route between Europe and Asia, and up until that point been controlled by the French and the United Kingdom. And the Egyptians also blockaded international waterways near its shores that Israeli ships were using. Israel, France, and the United Kingdom attacked Egypt, got the waterways reopened, although Egypt retained control of the Suez Canal. And so there are major issues there, where there were also issues of communism that were involved, where Egypt was backed by communist countries in that war. Then in 1967, we have the 6-Day War. Israel's neighbors mass 250,000 troops along the borders and again blocked Israeli ships from using international waterways. In retaliation, Israel launches a surprise attack, destroying the coalition's air forces, and Israel captures territory. From Jordan, they get the Old City and the Old City of Jerusalem and the West Bank. So they're going to get back this territory right here. And then from Syria, they're going to get the Golan Heights right here. And from Egypt, they're going to get the Gaza Strip and the Sinai Peninsula, which is right here, right in front of my face. Okay, and then in 1973, we have the Yom Kippur War. A surprise attack on Israel by its neighbors took place on the holiest day of the year for Jews, and this is the war ended without a change of boundaries. Then in 1979, we finally have a peace treaty. Egypt's President Anwar Sadat and Israel's Prime Minister Menachem Begin sign a peace treaty in 1979. This follows a series of meetings with U.S. President Jimmy Carter at Camp David. And Israel returned the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt. So Israel gives this chunk of land back to Egypt. And in exchange, and this is a huge deal, Egypt recognizes Israel's right to exist. So Egypt is the first Arab country to say, Israel, you are a real country. You have a right to be a country, to be a nation. Sadat is then subsequently assassinated by Egyptian soldiers who are extremist Muslims who are opposed to compromising with Israel. However, his successor, Mubarak, carried out the terms of the treaty. Now, you might recognize the name Mubarak because this is the guy who was who stepped down from the throne of Egypt just a few years ago in 2011 in the recent Egyptian revolution. So this history that we're talking about is really very recent. And then a half century after the Six-Day War, the status of the other territories occupied by Israel has not yet been settled. So it's still very crazy over there. Okay, so after the 1973 war, the Palestinians emerged as Israel's principal opponent. The Palestinians view themselves as the legitimate rulers of Israel. The biggest obstacle to peace in the Middle East is the status of Jerusalem, because all three religions, so Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, all see Jerusalem as their holy city. And peace will likely not be possible if one religion has political control over Jerusalem. So right now, the city has different sections. There's a Christian section, a Muslim section, and a Jewish section within the city. Okay, so, oh, and an Armenian section. So here you can see the Muslim section, the Christian section. Here's the Armenian section, and then the Jewish section. And you can see, I'm trying to make my mouse move, but that's not happening. There we go. Okay, so the Dome of the Rock is a really important building, actually, for all the religions. But let me give you a little tidbit there. The Dome of the Rock is, I have a poster of it. Let me see if there's a negative. Man. Okay, the Dome of the Rock is a really, really important mosque. And for you guys who aren't up on your Osama bin Laden history, Osama bin Laden's dad is actually like a contractor, so like a builder, you know, a guy who like owns a huge construction company. And it was Osama bin Laden's dad's company who restored the Dome of the Rock, like the last time it was built. I'll show you a picture of it. Well, let's see if we can go look for it really quickly. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Don't look at that. Do 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 do. I mean, you can look at it. I'm nominating someone for something. Do 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 do. See how cool it is. Do 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 do. Oh, we should look at the inside too. Okay, so this is the Dome of the Rock. Let me scooch over a little bit there. And it's covered in gold. Isn't that awesome? So here, this is what the poster I have of it looks like. It's just like desert and kind of like, you know, khaki colored buildings. And here it just like stands out. It's amazing. But here it is in its beautifulness. And let's go back and see if we can see the inside. So you can see isn't that cool? Look at that. I don't know if you can see all the details. So this is believed to be the place where Muhammad ascended into heaven. There's a lot of believing in ascendance in Islam instead of, you know, whereas Christians believe whereas Christians believe Jesus was crucified. I was putting Jesus and crucified together. I wasn't calling Jesus Judas. Don't worry. So whereas Christians believe Jesus was crucified, Muslims believe Jesus ascended into heaven. And they also believe Muhammad ascended. And I think they believe Mary ascended as well. So the ground is still the way it was during the time that Muhammad ascended. And then look at the detail on the walls. Let me see if we can find some more. Let's go down here and see what we can find. And I'm sure you guys probably know that Muslims don't, the rule of no icons in the Ten Commandments is viewed very, very strictly in Islam, and so there's no iconography to the extent that there are no pictures of Muhammad, and they only use geometric designs in their art or calligraphy from the Quran. I don't know if we're gonna get this page or not. Well, back. Oh, let's see what we've got here. There it is. Well, I don't know if it's any better, but I don't know if you can see, this is all calligraphy all along here. It's all calligraphy all in here. Very cool. Yeah, that's all we get. Okay, so let's go back to our PowerPoint. Oh, that's all we get to talk about? Well, okay. Well, so the book has lots of other good stuff. I hope that you really take in this chapter. I'm a big fan of religion, if you can't tell. I'm really interested in it, and I hope that you enjoy reading this chapter. And if you have more questions, we can sit and talk about it. And if you have more to add, I hope that you bring that up. Obviously, I don't know, I don't even know a lot about every religion. I'm really interested, and I'd love for you to share things that you know. Let's just do the summary really quickly. Holy places, let's see. Holy places and holidays in a universalizing religion are related to the events in the life of its founder or prophet. We talked about Muhammad and Jesus and Buddha. Wait, is that right? Yeah. They're related to the local physical geography and an ethnic. Whereas ethnic religions, the holidays are related to the local physical geography and an ethnic religion. Oh, there we go. In an ethnic religion. With the Earth's surface dominated by 4 large religions, expansion of the territory occupied by one religion may reduce the territory of another. And we see that that's definitely happened with Judaism and Islam. And then I don't know if there's a perception of that with the Taliban and Western values, or if that's really happened. And then your book also talks about Hinduism versus social equality. That's one we didn't talk about tonight. But the issue of caste system and let's see, it talks about the issue of the caste system and the British coming in, and how the British kind of wanted to get rid of the caste system, which Gandhi was also part of too. So, so that's a really interesting